Let me say something before starting. I'm very, very happy to be here, and the effort by the organizer has been incredible. They put all this together in less than 3 months, and also thank you to all the attendees, because there are nowadays many Bitcoin conferences. But this kind of conference is something very needed since a long time. And so I want to keep this panel quite short, because I believe that the most important parts are your questions and also the demo. And also this is the panel before lunch, so let's get to the point and let's start. This panel, as Giacomo will say before, is the importance of running a full validating node. We said before, not your keys, not your coins, and here we are to say, not your nodes, not your rules. It's very important to run a full validating node. It's not easy at all. We need specific tools, and especially because not all the people are so technical. So we want to address the best strategies for the non-technical users, very committed and smart people that really want to secure and enforce their rules for their Bitcoin. So this is Mir BTC. Right now, currently a full-time mom, but in the past I have been a troll on Twitter. I organized Bitcoin Malta meetup, helped with the BHP network, and of course, I am mom also of ScanCoinBot. This is my greatest achievement. Yes, first question is about who are you guys? I know many people know who you are, and also Francis also addresses it before. If something has changed between the panels, just let us know. But please, go deep in detail. We want to know who are you, what are you working on, where are you from, and why do you think we called you for this panel?
Okay. So I'm Michael. Some of you know me as Ketominer. I'm pretty young in the Bitcoin space. I started really being involved full-time 2.5 years ago. And 2 years ago, I started building hardware full nodes, first on Raspberry Pis and now on a more powerful hardware, which you know as the Nodo. The Nodo is a commercial product which exists for 4 months now commercially. It took 18 months to develop and test countless combinations of hardware before coming up with something really usable and something that users are able to keep for a few years. I estimate the lifetime of this device between 4 and 5 years before you need an upgrade.
Okay. Now, yeah, okay. So I'm Udi. I'm a software developer. I recently joined as a co-maintainer in AB Core, which you saw briefly before. It's a project to allow running Bitcoin Core full node on an Android device without, without flashing Linux, without doing any complicated stuff, just installing an app and running it. Which is, I think, very interesting. I'll talk about later in the demo, but it can be very helpful to start very fast and learn as you go. Also, I'm from Israel, from Tel Aviv, and we have the Bitcoin embassy there, and we recently had like a 2-day workshop where it was a free workshop where we taught people to install and configure and do everything they need to run a full node and a Lightning node. So it was a very interesting experience. Yeah, that's me. And maybe you know me from, some of you from Twitter as the guy with the sunglasses. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I presented myself this morning. I think the reason I'm in this panel is probably following the UASF and No2X advocacy In order for that to never happen again, I started to advocate a lot on for other people to run nodes, primarily because I'm a humanitarian and I like to do that kind of stuff, but also because I'm trying to protect my own holdings by making sure that something like Node2x doesn't happen. I co-founded a project called CypherNode, which I'm going to talk about this afternoon, which makes it easier to run enterprise-grade full nodes. And I'm currently, CypherNode is not a hardware project, but we're currently trying to make nodes run on the smallest powered device possible and eventually make them run in a router.
Okay. After these brief questions, there are going to be the demos. Michael, you're not going to present the demo right now because Nodal will be presented later because it's also a Lightning node. But Udi is going to present AB Core, and Francis is going to present CypherNode. But we are going to have Aleko Spilini presenting how to install and set up a core node from the scratch using an Odroid device and Linux. So, second question. Why is it so important to run a full validating node? For example, Satoshi in the white paper said that we don't need so many full validating nodes. He was expecting something like few data center running full nodes and the majority of nodes being SPV light protocol nodes. So why do you think right now we need to run a full validating node?
I think one reason is that we know there are flaws in SPV because it leaks your privacy to some third-party node that you have to trust. And so as we all say, don't trust, verify. So the only way to really be trustless is to run your own node. And I would even add the best way to do that is probably to have it the less connected to the internet as possible. So if you connect it to the internet, use Tor. If you can use a satellite dish, use a satellite dish instead.
Yeah, and one of the things Satoshi wrote in the white paper was that SPV would enable fraud proofs, and he just briefly said that we can use fraud proofs to mitigate some sort of risks that SPV wallets have. And it's been 10 years and we still don't know how to do those fraud proofs, right? He didn't specify them and no one else has a good idea how to do them. They might be impossible. So this idea doesn't seem to work. It's in the white paper, but it doesn't seem to work. And yeah, I think privacy is definitely one good reason. There's also what Francis said about, protecting ourselves as a network. I think I've been trying for a long time to figure out some kind of an analogy to what it's like to not have a full node and what it means security-wise, and something I came up with. It's not super exact, but it's kind of similar. So imagine you're working for some company, let's say you're working for Google, and you get your paycheck in cash, right? So each month they give you an envelope and they write on the envelope, this envelope has like $1,000 in the envelope, right? And you take the envelope, you put it in your pocket, but you never open it. You never look to see if it actually has $1,000 inside. And the first time that you check if it has $1,000 inside is when you want to spend them, right? You give the envelope to someone else and they check. So you're kind of taking a bet. You're trusting Google, right? Maybe they're your employer, so maybe you trust them, but you're trusting them. And you never know if there's actually money there until you open it and check. So that's kind of what it's like to not run a full node. And another problem is the privacy thing. So even if you're using SPV or something else, you're always asking someone how much money you have. You have to ask someone. Maybe a server, maybe another peer, you have to ask someone. And then this guy knows what addresses you are interested in. So you're leaking a lot of information when you're doing that. So both privacy and security are the best when you're running a full node.
Yeah, so I guess the main reason is that everybody wants your Bitcoins and everybody wants to scam you. And you can't trust anyone. That's just a fact, especially in Bitcoin. So the full node is your line of defense. And the other part of it is that, if you're in control of your own keys, then your wealth is unseizable, which is great. But if you're not able to transact it, then your wealth is completely useless. So when we think about Bitcoin, like what it means philosophically, you know, property rights are inherent to a person's existence. When you're born, you have them, and no one gives them to you. However, when you're trying to enforce your property rights, we came into this problem as a society, and we decided to create governments in order to enforce them. So Bitcoin is the first ever implementation of a self-enforced property right without third parties, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me, that this right doesn't need, you know, we don't need the government anymore. We don't need that compromise in order to enforce the right. And there is no way to guarantee that right if, unless you're running a full node. Because if you're not running a full node, then you are, you know, potentially going to be censored from the network. Whereas, because if you're, let's say that you're blacklisted somehow, you can't use any exchanges, you can't use hosted wallets, and let's say that, you know, hypothetically, a government says, well, any SPV node that processes, you know, transactions, or any node that broadcasts this transaction for this person, or anything like that, any node that feeds information to this person, is going to be, for example, liable. People could blacklist you and so forth. So the whole point of Bitcoin was to do that, was to be peer-to-peer without third parties, and there's really good reasons for that, and simply you just can't trust anyone. And as far as analogies go, when I came into Bitcoin, I was a libertarian, and I was mostly interested by the sound money Schelling point aspect of it and the consensus of it. But then I kind of realized that you can't have sound money if you can't have censorship-resistant payments. And just to maybe finish off with an analogy, which I love your analogy, you know, a lot of people talk about Bitcoin as being digital gold. Okay, so imagine that you have a vault in Switzerland, and you have the keys, so only you can enter it. But people, they pay you by making little gold deposits in the vault. But you're not there, so there's some guy that you're paying or hiring, or actually it's probably a volunteer in most cases, that's standing outside your vault, and every time gold comes in, he's going to check the gold, make sure it's real gold, you know, bite it and everything, and put it in the box, and he's just going to tell you, like, you got this amount of money. So do you know you got the money? No, someone's telling you got the money. The concept of actually knowing 100% without any shadow of a doubt that you receive money, and that is an irreversible payment, and you can give away a good, that degree of confidence, like 100% degree of confidence is, how do you say, it's a really large level above 99.9% of the degree of confidence. So it's irreproducible. The 100% confidence in receiving a payment is something that's also mind-blowing. So you may have the keys, but you don't know how much gold you receive, or if you did. And most importantly, you don't know if it's copper or not, copper painted with gold. So even in SPV, there's a lot of flaws with SPV. I think we can make SPV better, but there's something that, you know, we're never going to be able to do, or I don't know if there's a solution for that now, but it's to make sure that you're on the right chain when you receive a payment. And that's not a theoretical thing, right? So we saw with No2x, there's some things such as replay protection. You can be fed, you know, you can be connected, for example, to an Electrum server, which is running, you know, a Bcash, you know, node or something like that, and you think you're receiving, well, not Electrum because they fixed that with some things, but some wallets. So it's really that 100% degree of certainty, which if you can, why wouldn't you?
Okay. So security, human rights, privacy, still there are some limits. We're going to use a lot of bandwidth for validation, disk space. What are you going to reply to Satoshi? Do we really need to use all these tech parts to run a full validating node?
So I don't know if I don't remember exactly what Satoshi said in the white paper on full nodes. I'm not sure. I think he used the term nodes and miners interchangeably, right? A lot of times he said nodes and meant miners, or the other way around. I don't recall exactly. So first of all, it doesn't have to be so hard, right? You don't, depending on what you need, you don't necessarily need to have a lot of storage, for example. You can run a prune node, and this can be useful for a lot of things, perhaps for everything that you'll need. And that's not very expensive in storage at all. Bandwidth isn't that high either. You can move the amount of things the data that you download to a minimum, and even if you don't, it's not, compared to other stuff, like compared to video or whatever, it's not a lot, but it depends on your situation. And of course, there are other options like satellite and radio and so on, so there are other ways to get this data. But yeah, I don't think it has to be so difficult. I think it's two things. One thing is education, right? I think we did not do a very good job in the beginning. I think a lot of people heard about Bitcoin the first time in maybe TV, media, newspaper, and they heard, okay, Bitcoin is this thing that magically uses math, and because of math, it's always correct, and everything will always be fine. And that's not exactly how it works. There's a lot of responsibility on the user to make sure that things adhere to the rules. Bitcoin doesn't take care of it magically for you. You have to do it. You have to do it yourself. So the first thing is people need to know that they need to do some effort, not a lot, but need to do some effort. Otherwise, they're trusting someone else. And the other part is making it easier, right? So I think both of these guys are really trying to make it easier, and there are a lot of approaches to make it easier to run a full node. And I think we'll get there because it doesn't inherently have to be, very, very hard.
On the other side, I think we shouldn't minimize the issue of the bandwidth. The storage is less and less an issue because the storage is becoming ridiculously cheap. But in some forward countries, such as the United States, for example, some of our clients killed their monthly traffic just with one full sync. So yeah, it's still an issue, but we're working on that. Actually, we will have an update with a few tweaks to reduce the bandwidth used by the node.
Well, I think the guys pretty much covered it. I mean, it's not that difficult to run a full node, and I agree. I think Satoshi referred to miners in that sense. The whole Bitcoin system was designed and is being designed so that it remains easy to run a full node. I mean, there's a reason why we have 10-minute block times. I mean, I think we would all like them to be shorter, but by having this time frame, we're ensuring that all the nodes have the time to communicate. There's a reason why we didn't want to increase the 1 megabyte block limit. It was to keep running full nodes easy. A lot of people are working on their spare time to reduce those costs. I mean, I've seen an incredible amount of effort being done in the last year. In September, when I was at the Riga Huddle conference, I was like, I'm so bullish. Everybody that we were friends with, we're talking about, everybody has some kind of tinkering project somewhere that they're working on in order to make nodes, in order to make tutorials. So, I mean, I would say to Satoshi, like, good job. It's not super difficult. I mean, SPV was a bit of a flop. And another consideration is that what I think we should so there's two different, I guess, philosophies right now happening in Bitcoin regarding full nodes. Some people want to make SPV safer, and some people want to make full nodes more easy to run, which are absolutely not mutually exclusive things. We have a new opportunity with Lightning Network to kind of do it right this time, because unlike Bitcoin, for Lightning to work properly well right now, you need to run a full node, a full Bitcoin core node. In C Lightning, you can prune it technically a little. You can prune it, but it works much better with a full archival node. So instead of making Lightning Network run without full nodes, I think we should instead focus on helping people run the nodes. I think realistically, in terms of adoption, getting mass adoption without full nodes is a little bit meaningless. It's actually possibly a bit dangerous for the network, because if we get a mass of users right now to onboard, for example, onto Lightning or to things like that, and they're not running full nodes, then you're just increasing the amount of Bitcoins, like economic weight, which is not being in a full node, and which is not actively defending the network with its enforcement of the rules. So yeah, I mean, you can use pruned for pretty much everything right now. someone in C Lightning will have to correct me, or Lightning will have to correct me on the situation in Pruned. I think it's getting much better. Other than running a block explorer, there's very few like use cases to keep the entire copy of the blockchain. Although if you can, you might as well. Like, why not? We're seeing nodes run on mobile phones now, and as Bitcoin Core is like 600 megs of RAM. That's soon going to be runnable in a router. I think as we mentioned, it's mostly the CPU validation, which is a huge problem because the user experience of onboarding is very poor. So a lot of people think, okay, let's start with SPV, and then while it syncs, let's get onto Bitcoin Core. I don't really have an opinion on that. I think if you're going to use Bitcoin, using Bitcoin is a big step in your life. Using Bitcoin is a big responsibility and a big thing. And I think, you need to have a bit of skin in the game as well. So, you can wait a day, I guess.
Okay, guys, you pretty much convinced me, but I still have some doubts. For example, do I need some very expensive equipment, or do I have to become a super expert in system administration? What do you think are right now the best strategies, the best equipment, the best scenario for non-technical people? I think you all have a solution.
So, about expensive equipment, I think any PC less than 10 or 15 years old is able to run a full node. The degree of difficulty setting it up is also very low. You can use a node launcher on any Windows PCs. It takes a few minutes to install. You just need to wait to sync. Of course, you can buy one of our devices, or the Casa node, or the BitSeed node, or the Samurai Dojo node. It's ready to use. It comes. You will see the demo. I think you will all agree that it's easy to use. And if you want to go the long way, you can always install Linux on your computer and do the full setup yourself, or use the BTC Pay server all-in-one solution, which is like one command line deployment of the full node and the payment server.
So I think that there are two paths, maybe two goals that you want to achieve when you're running a full node. So one is just get it done and secure your own funds and secure the transactions that you're receiving. And for that, I think that those built-in solutions are perfect. You plug it in, it works, and it's great. And another path that I think is useful for most people to at least try once is kind of doing it your own. We need to make this easier too, but kind of doing it your own way, because then you learn what's going on. You don't just you know what's happening. You understand what the node is doing. You understand how it's running. You understand what maybe its weaknesses. So I think it's important to at least do it once. And the nice thing is that you can do it on really any kind of hardware. And if you're not in a hurry, so you can wait a few days for it to sync and then just play around, try it. And then by all means, if you're more comfortable with one of the all-in-one boxes, I think they're great. So you try to achieve both things if you want, or just go to one of these paths. Yeah.
Right. So, the question again was, sorry.
What do you think are the best tools and strategies for a non-technical user?
Right. So Bitcoin Core in Windows is pretty good. Like, I have it running on my laptop. It was like 97% synced when I got here. It was syncing in the cafe this morning pretty well. It's probably like 99.7% synced. And that was pretty easy. So once I have my Bitcoin Core up and running, let's say on a crappy laptop at home, I keep it plugged in, which is why we like things like the Nuddle, because they can run like for a long time and not overheat and do stuff like that. But realistically, you can have let's say you have a desktop at home, you run your node there, and then you go on your Blockstream green wallet, and you connect via SPV to your own node, and then you're good to go. The tools that the guys mentioned are great. Cyphernode is a little bit more complicated. You need to use a command line. It's two commands. It's not just run, it's set up and then run. But it is two commands. Things like the node launcher from Pierre, they abstract away those commands with buttons, which is really cool, which everybody likes, and most services are going to do that. And in terms of hardware, okay, so let's say that you have let's say that you start off with your own blockchain that you synced somewhere on a USB stick or SD card or anything like that. You can realistically plug that into some really crappy hardware and run it. It's mostly the syncing and specifically the later syncing in Bitcoin Core, which is going to take a lot of time. So, of course, if your hardware is more expensive, it will sync faster. There's more CPU power to it. I think one of the things that, this is something that BTC Pay also worked on. This is something that we're working on. I think that one of the really useful tools that is going to happen is, this is something that I'm going to talk about this afternoon as well, but you can connect to a cloud instance with some tools like BTC Pay has the BTC Pay launcher for Lunanode. Lunanode is a cloud service in Canada. And what you can do is you can rent the most expensive VM like in Canada for 50 cents an hour. Wow, it's super expensive. That's really expensive for server. However, that'll sync Bitcoin in like 2 hours, right? So you can rent a VM, sync the chain. Of course, you know, I also believe you should only trust metal and not VMs. But realistically, if you're syncing it on your own VM and then you're downloading it and validating it on your own machine, that's pretty secure. So it's only that initial bootstrapping that needs a lot of hardware, and I think that's just going to be a cloud service for a lot of people.
Okay, last question is, why do you think your personal project is important? I'm talking about Nodal, I'm talking about AB Core, I'm talking about CipherNode.
So our end goal is merchant adoption. It's really designed as something you put in your back office and use it for your POS in your front store. We think at Nodal that this is what will drive really Bitcoin adoption. It's merchant adoption, not end user adoption, because what's the point of having Bitcoin if you can't use them in your real life? So why I want to go to pay my bread with Lightning, I want to pay my suppliers for the Nodals with Lightning, and I want a circular economy only in Lightning.
I think to me what I really like about AB Core is that it, you know, it uses what you already have. You don't need like anything, and you can start immediately. And then you can choose one of like 3 ways to use it. The first one is, you know, just download, sync it, and then try to play around with it. You know, maybe you're not taking it too seriously. You just want to know how things work. You don't want to set up a computer for that. You don't want to set up anything. So you can just play around, try some commands, see how it behaves, and then you get a better idea what you want to do later. So that's one way. Another way is to use it locally on your device, like you saw before with Green Address. So you run on your phone, a mobile wallet on your phone. Maybe it's green, maybe it's another one, and you want to protect your funds with a real full node because you don't trust SPV. So you have a full node on your phone, and you use that to back your wallet. And that has kind of high storage requirements, but you can do that if you want to. And the third way is to have a box in your house that you connect to remotely with your phone. So that's a really interesting one because recently a lot of kind of internet TV subscriptions give you Android boxes for free. So a lot of people just have them at home. I don't know how many people, but it's catching up. So, you know, people are getting these boxes. You already have them, right? They're already always on. They're always connected to the internet, so they're already doing what they do. And you install a full node easily on them, and then you can connect your wallet remotely wherever you are to your box. So I think it's a very intriguing use case.
Yeah, so I think CipherNode is kind of the way that Bitcoin backends were meant to be built on top of Bitcoin Core. So Bitcoin Core is a very conservative project. It doesn't add a lot of features that aren't, you know, it's slow to add features for very good reason. In C Lightning, for example, which is based heavily on Bitcoin Core, there's a concept of plugin. You can create your own functions and plug them in your own C Lightning, which is the same concept as CipherNode generally. So CipherNode's audience for the moment is mainly developers and project managers, startups, and Bitcoin apps and services. I'll talk a little bit about what the problem is there, because we're talking a lot here about running nodes for Bitcoin users, but the reality is that a lot of the Bitcoin validation of payments happens at the startup level, right? So a company like Bills, which processes payments, will validate a lot more transactions than a user. And Also, you know, Cipher is kind of like the way that Ethereum tools are being built, and there's a reason why Ethereum is so popular. It's because they targeted developers and made it super easy for them to run and build apps like really early on. I mean, you go to hackathon these days. I mean, all you need to do is like go on the consensus GitHub and like fork something, and you know, you got an app. You know, you got a decentralized crowdfunding app in like a few minutes or stuff like that. There's deployment tools and everything. So get them while they're young. That's always been kind of my motto. I participate in a lot of blockchain hackathons in my day. You know, doing Bitcoin and PGP stuff and open timestamps, trying to make everybody look a bit stupid with all these easy tools. And what I realized is like Infura, Ethereum Foundation, like Consensus, they would like swarm those meetups, and they would have like really easy out-of-the-box frameworks to develop on top of Ethereum. And you know, a lot of people, they have technological debt by starting off with crappy technology, and then they don't want to change their backends, and they're stuck with legacy stuff. A good example of that is, you know, we just had a big spike in the increase of SegWit, and why is that? It's because Bitcoin, BEC32, I think, and that's because I think a Bitcoin J just added like BEC32 like a few weeks or a month ago or something like that. Another reason why it's important is like running like Bitcoin Core is a good software actually. I mean, a lot of people say that it's not modular or anything like that. That's true, but it is very good software. But it does lack some functionality, and when you're developing a Bitcoin app, you need Bitcoin, but you need all sorts of other things to run in sync with Bitcoin, and it's complicated for a lot of project managers, and the shortcut is to go through software as a service, a SaaS application. So there's a lot of node as a service businesses out there that will run a node for you and let you have some advanced configurations, and you know, a junior web developer can connect to it without worrying about security and everything like that. So our goal was to kind of open source that. So I'm pretty confident that our stack is much better than blockchain.info, Coinbase's API, BitPay's API. I know it's better than BlockCypher's API. Sorry, I love you guys, but I mean, I've used you and I've used CipherNode. You know, you can try yourself, guys. Yeah, it's just about people will make mistakes really early on, like trusting another third-party company, and then once you have like a functioning business, you're focused on marketing and all that kind of stuff, and you don't listen to your engineering team. So I guess it's kind of a sales pitch to help the engineer convince his project manager that they should run their own full node and make it easier.
Thank you very much for all your answers. You've been super clear, and I can't wait for the tutorials. So now it's time for your questions. I hope there are some. Any questions? Oh, perfect.
So great. Do you have any ideas to implement some sort of rules? So if you say not your node, not your rules, you have some option to implement some rules. Just for example, I don't accept transaction with a fee lower than 2 Satoshis, just as an example, or some other things I can implement in this kind of nodes.
Yeah, you can already do that. Actually, in terms of tools, there's a graphical user interface for Bitcoin Core configurations. So you can change the configurations of Bitcoin Core. You can't change like the consensus rules, right? Yeah, sure. But there's some rules you can change, of course, like minimum relay fee and all that kind of stuff. So the best way to do that is through these graphical user interface Bitcoin Core configuration tools. There's one by Jameson Lopp, so lopp.net. You just like type in stuff and it will spit out a configuration file. You go in the folder and you just replace the configuration file. Yeah.
I'll just chime in and say that it's true you can change a lot in the configuration. But I think when we say that not your node, not your rules, we're speaking specifically about consensus rules. So I think it's not something you'd want to change. Usually you would want to follow rules that you think that other people will follow along with you. But you can, if you want to change them, you can go into the source code and change whatever you want. And if you get people to follow you, then it's possible. But it's gonna be hard.
So signaling would also be possible. So if I want to signaling something like node to X, for example, I think there are also some signalings in the full nodes, right? So this should be a good introduction for new users to take part in something like this.
Okay, so the question was about signaling. So okay, I'll say about a little bit about signaling. So first of all, what you're talking about is the user agent string in the Bitcoin Core, and you can change it. So if you're running Bitcoin Core, you can change it and broadcast whatever you want. The thing is, we kind of called it signaling during UASF, but you're not really signaling anything meaningful because anyone can run, like millions of nodes that change the user agent. So it doesn't really mean anything significant. It was a nice maybe marketing campaign, but that's not the reason UASF succeeded, right? The reason it succeeded is because I guess miners believed that really people are running it. It's not because they signaled, it's because they understood that this is what people are actually doing. So the signaling is, it's nice to broadcast, but it doesn't affect the network in any way.
It's like having a hashtag in your Twitter handle.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, so my question is kind of complicated. I'd like to know some kind of best practice to combine all these. Let me start in a different way. I can't believe, Francis, that you actually have your private key on a Windows computer. Okay?
I don't.
See, so you're running a node, but you run it only for verification. But you can't use it to send something. But you have to send Bitcoin somewhere. Okay? So you need a hardware wallet for sending to keep your private keys, and Bitcoin Core doesn't support hardware wallets. So I would like to just know, what do you guys do to combine all this into a working conglomerate or system that you can actually use, preferably with a smartphone at the front end?
Actually, in Bitcoin Core 0.18, they would allow for hardware wallets a very low-profile project that's not in the Bitcoin repo. It's the Bitcoin Dash Core repo called HWI for hardware wallet interface. I'm going to talk about all that at 4 also, but that will be possible to do. So, but to be more concrete, the best way to do it right now is to run an Electrum personal server. Electrum personal server is a lightweight Electrum server. So that's a Bitcoin Core daemon that's running on, and there's the Electrum logic on top of it, including an indexer and some advanced functions. And what you do is you launch that and you connect your Electrum client to your own Electrum server. You can do that very privately. Not too, like, I'm not a techie. I learned to use a command line a year and a half ago when I started to build CipherNode. And you connect over SSH and it's awesome. And you connect your Trezor. This is actually like what I do on a daily basis, or cold card. You connect that into your Electrum client that connects to your own server. Very easy to do. If you're even like more privacy focused, you can run Tails. Tails is the Amnesiac Incognito Live system. It's a operating system that you put on a USB and you plug it in your computer. That comes with Electrum pre-installed. All you do is like you go in the network settings and you put your Electrum server. I don't know if there's tools to launch it. We're certainly building a tool to launch it. Even over Tor, it's not that difficult to do. So, Electrum personal server and Electrum and a hardware wallet together, it's pretty good stack.
And can you use Lightning with that? Or does it, because I run Lightning on a Tinkerboard S, it's kind of a glorified Raspberry. But with Bitcoin Core.
So most, pretty much the default for most Lightning nodes that you can install on desktop would use your Bitcoin full node. So that's probably the best setup, and it's very easy to set it up. So if you use a Lightning node on your machine, you will probably set it up with a full node, with a Bitcoin Core full node. And There's a nice thing about that. If you use a Lightning Network node and you use a mobile device that tethers to this node, because there are mobile devices that can do this today, then you can also use them for on-chain Bitcoin transactions, because almost all of the Lightning wallets support this. So you have one wallet that you use on your phone that connects backed by your full node at home that supports both Lightning and normal Bitcoin transactions. So that's like a nice bonus. Electric server, we'll have a demo for it tomorrow. And one more thing, a small tip: if you don't want to do like any configuration at all, if you don't want to do anything, if you're just trying things out and you downloaded Bitcoin Core and you synced it and you just want to use it somehow, so one thing you could do, Bitcoin Core has a feature that's called import address, a command called import address. And what it does, it puts a watch-only address in your wallet, and it will tell you what's in it from the moment you start using it. You can't spend it, but it can tell you what you have. So let's say you have like a Trezor and you connect it to your device and you're going to receive a payment. So before you give the address to the person who's going to pay you, you're going to do import address with this address in your Bitcoin Core node. And then the moment you get the transaction, you'll see it in your full node and you know you're good and you can keep using your Trezor as usual. So that's like the easiest, immediate way to use a full node like today.
Can Bitcoin Core now, does it support XPub now? Or?
Think so. There's the...
It does, but not importing watch only. And in order to solve that problem, we built a plugin in CipherNode to let you do that, right? So because it's not in Bitcoin Core, we have an XPub watcher on top of it. And we import addresses into Bitcoin Core, but we do it on a rolling basis with 100 addresses using import multi. And in terms of like using your phone, there's Shazek in the room, I think. Shazek is the developer of a utility called Spark Wallet. So Spark Wallet is also in CipherNode. A lot of people use it. It's great. I use it personally. And all you need to do is type your IP, and then you're in. Like there's a password and stuff like that. So that's just a user interface over your Lightning node. So Lightning I'm not an expert in like this stuff that much, but in terms of Lightning, I believe there needs to be continuous signing. So it's hard, same as Wasabi Wallet. So I think you can't use hardware wallets now, I believe, because you need to sign continuously. So I would like hardware wallet developers to think about the idea of having a session on a hardware wallet. So you plug it in, and it will continuously sign if it's coming from a particular software, and then when you plug it, it stops signing. So any kind of little tweak and fix that can be done at the wallet level, it's mostly wallet developers that need to do those little type of tweaks. But there's a multitude of tools that let you connect. And the way that I see things going, I think that a wallet will one day just refer to the interface which connects your hardware wallet to your remote node.
Okay, thanks a lot.
About C-Lightning, you mentioned the plugin system. Actually, there are people working on a plugin which replaces the signing part and uses a hardware wallet instead. The problem is, as you mentioned, it has to be continually connected to the device, and it means that you don't control what you're signing. So,
yeah,
but it's only for routing nodes. You don't have to continuously sign if it's just a client node.
Yeah, exactly, and that would be super powerful. It would give every Bitcoin user like an HSM, right? Almost.
So thank you very much again, and we are perfectly on time, and it's time for lunch. Yeah.